Fun facts about the world's largest ball of twine. If laid out from end to end, the ball would stretch from here to the far side of Jupiter. Also, scientists theorized by 2053, the sheer weight of the ball will push the Earth out of orbit, propelling our planet on a collision course with the Sun. Here's your look at the new Boss Fight Studios' Sam and Max, Sam the Canine Seamus. Sam and Max, the self-appointed freelance police, are the stars of video games, comics, and an animated TV series. These roguish scamps doling out swift, blunt force justice are now the posable action figures you never realized you need. Before we get a closer look at Sam, the first thing, of course, we're going to want to do, as we always do here on this channel, right around this time, we're going to take the tape measure and we're going to put it right to the very top of his head. That, of course, will give us the measurements for how tall the figure actually stands. That was really simple, wasn't it? Always simple. Always simple. The figure stands 5.7 inches in height. We can switch that over to centimeters, revealing that Sam is 14.6, so he's a little over 14.5 centimeters tall. Of course. What kind of reviewer would I be if I didn't do a comparison with him along with his partner Max? Don't answer that question. We're going to move Sam over just for 1 second, freeing up a little bit of space, and bring his slightly smaller partner in so you can see how Sam stacks up along with Max, the figure that we already looked at. A big muchos gracias to the folks over at Boss Fight Studio, by the way, that provided this sample of Sam that we could have a look at in this review. Sam, like the previously looked at Max, does come with a lot of accessories, and I'm going to do my best to go through individually and extensively show you the pretty cool stuff that they packaged along with this figure. Starting first, why don't we have a look at his gun? It's always a good time to start a review with a big giant gun. The gun is slightly a little on the more warped side, just the way it was freed from its plastic prison. It's a more denser plastic, I will say, as well, so I may have to actually take a hot water bath. No, not me, although I probably could use one. I will probably submerge this, though, in hot water just to soften up the plastic just a little bit and bend that back into place, because I feel like right now I would need the strength of Superman to be able to bend that. It does have some really nice coloring and sculpting going for it. Not only going with the route of a more slightly bluish gunmetal gray, but they've also added this really nice glitter effect to the paint. Boy, does that ever look really nice. You can stock out the packaging, actually put this into the figure's hands, because he actually has two hands. Specifically, this hand I think is best for the job. Now, I did find myself having to heat the hand just a little bit to free it away from its palm, just enough that I could fit the pistol into his hand. This big giant revolver of his. Kind of finagle your way a little bit further up, so at least you can get it around the trigger finger, and then you've got Sam with his big giant gun. Slightly bent barrel, but still a nice looking big gun. He also comes included, let's just put the figure down here for 1 second. He comes included with his popsicle. I would suspect that would be an orange popsicle, and I would suspect if Sam's not quick to lick that down quickly, it probably is going to melt all over the place. I do like the little touches of detail that they added, these little drip marks. It's all over the place. What's your favorite popsicle, by the way? I asked to you, the viewing audience. Let me know down below in the comments section. Orange usually was the go-to for me, or grape. Delicious grape popsicle. You could usually break these, and half the time it would usually, at least for me, break part of the popsicle along with it. I could never break those properly. You'd always, try to break them over your lap, break them against the corner or edge of a table. It never worked. What am I talking about? But you can actually take them as well. Take the other hand, after all. He has two for them. And you just fit the popsicles into his hand. You really don't even need to fit both popsicle sticks into his hand. Really, only just one is more than enough. You can actually have him holding a popsicle and wielding a firearm. Isn't that fun? The figure also comes included with a whole bunch of swappable heads, hands, and a hat. Oh, and also a puppet, a paper bag puppet as well. Let's have a look at all those right now. Starting first, he comes with a bunch of different swappable heads. Let me grab actually both of them so you can see the difference between the two. You have more of a neutral, kind of confused Sam head sculpt, and then you got a more angrier looking Sam head sculpt as well. For probably the best comparisons, let me just put these down for 1 split second. Pardon me while I just grab the figure. I'm actually going to take the gun out of his hand. because I will want to actually remove this hand. I'm going to also, oh, the popsicle fell out of his hand. See, if he wasn't quick to lick that, it would have fallen, and that clearly seems to be the case. But anyways, the figure does come with, like I said, 3 swappable heads. There's this one, which is the happy-go-lucky Sam. There's this one, which is a little bit more of an angrier-looking Sam. And the one that we didn't forget about, there's also this one here, which, as you can see, has more of a confused look on his face, slightly. To change out any one of the heads is actually super easy. It benefits by the fact that the ball peg is close enough to his body and he doesn't have the little extra stem piece that Max ended up having. So when it comes to removing his head, all you really do is just pop that off of, as you can see, a very small looking ball peg. There is still the adjustable neck in there as well, but because again, so close of it is close to his body, it's really super easy to change out the heads. Then find the head that you want to go with, and just pop this into place. If you have some difficulty with the existing heads, the newer heads that you're going to be putting in, you can see that the socketed area there is a little on the smaller side. I would again recommend putting this in hot water or taking a hairdryer. You could as well. And just heat this up a little bit so it's a little bit easier to pop the head onto the ball peg. As quickly as I thought I was going to settle on this head sculpt, I decided at the last minute instead to go with this one, being my favorite of the 3. While the eyes and the mouth do change, the shape of the head, that gumdrop shape, as well as the ears, seem to be the same on all the head sculpts, as well as the hair that we'll talk about in a second. Whatever head you ended up settling on, one thing you will want to be careful of is the collar piece of his shirt. The collar is a separate piece. If you open up the jacket, which is again a softer plastic, this collar piece is separate. You could really, if you want to, take it right off, although it would make no sense to remove it. The reason why I say that, though, is when you are popping the head onto the ball peg, use my mouth to make that sound effect. When you do pop the head onto the ball joint, you just want to make sure that the collar piece is shifted in an area where it's not obstructing the ball peg, especially when you are putting that onto the ball peg. I'll stop making that sound, I promise. While we also have this head in place, let's actually look at the other accessory it comes included with. Specifically relating to his head, he also comes included with his hat. The hat, like the jacket, is made of a softer material. It has a matching color, or close enough of a matching color. And it has that little indentation that he's known to have in the cartoon, the comics, and so on. When you are putting onto his head, I mean, you can put it on any which way that you want, but I'd like to have it where the little indentation is on this side of his head. It's not so much frictioned, although if you put a little bit of pressure on it, it seems to sit on there a little bit better, but it does sit a little on the loose side. This would not be a case where you'd be able to do the blizzard test. Blizzard test basically is when you order a blizzard ice cream from Dairy Queen, they always tip it upside down just to show you that the ice cream is nice and thick. I can't do that really with Sam. If I was to tip the figure upside down, the hat surely, as you can see, would fall right off. I mean, you more or less just sit it on top of his head. It's not going to fall off necessarily, but again, you don't want to be giving it the blizzard test of tipping it upside down. I think what I may also just do is remove it for the time being as we look at the rest of the figure's accessories. For this, I'm going to put the figure down, straighten out his ankles. He also comes included with a bunch of swappable hands. Of course, right now we saw him with trigger firing hands, but he also comes with a pair of closed fists. Let's have a look at those right now. Sculpting on them is rather nice. Kind of a caramel color, if I could maybe pinpoint that with a food color. Closed fists, fine and good. He also comes included with a bunch of grabbing hands, or gripping hands. Grabbing and gripping are essentially the same thing. Very, very, again, nice looking hands. He comes again with the trigger firing hands for, again, holding the gun, but he has also one other swappable hand. So happens to be the very last accessory you're currently seeing here on the backdrop. He comes also included with the paper bag puppet. I say thank you, Boss Fight Studio, for the fact that you would have included the paper bag puppet. It doesn't have any posability to it. It's made of a slightly softer plastic. You can essentially see how it all works on the inside of the bag. There's a peg there that's the exact same peg as the hands. So if you want to change that out, all you're going to want to do is just grab the figure, hold on to the forearm for dear life, and then just wiggle the hand out. You will be making progress, although it's a much longer peg that you have to contend with. Just, again, wiggle this off and remove it from the peg. You see right there. Then go ahead and take the paper bag, and you're basically just going to be fitting the sleeve of the jacket inside of that, and you'll just snap that into place. And he's got the little paper bag puppet. Unfortunately, due to the size of the sleeve, because the sleeve is so thick, it's a little harder. You kind of have to bring the arm up, I guess, to get the full effect. Turn his head. There we go. And you can have him wearing the paper bag puppet. I think that's so fun, the fact that they would have included that. So let's spend a little bit more time looking at Sam here. Of course, he's got his jacket on here, which is softer plastic, and I guess in theory could be removed from the rest of the figure. Of course, unfortunately, then the sleeves would still remain that are of the jacket, so really taking it off doesn't make any sense whatsoever. You will probably notice as well that there's a gap between the tops of his shoulders and the rest of his jacket here. They obviously have left the space there so that will allot for articulating the figure, which we'll look at more so in a second. If you have the arms a little bit more brought down, which is still something that the figure's capable of doing, you see more of that gap starting to surface. Personally, I like to bring the arms a little bit higher up to reduce that gappage, and then again, you can always compensate it with the arms and elbows that we'll look at more in a second. We just bring the jacket away so you can see the sculpting of the shirt underneath. Discussed already is the fact that the tie as well as the collar piece is all separate, so when you are popping the head off, again, I apologize for using that sound effect, you just want to make sure that the collar piece isn't too close to the ball socket. That's going to obstruct then putting the head in place. Nice paint done on the tie, alternating colors of the black and the blue. I think I actually had a tie like this in high school. Not this size, mind you, it looks like a cow's tongue. You can lift this up, and again, you got some nice sculpted buttons on the shirt underneath, revealing as well a nicely painted belt. A black belt with a very nice gold belt buckle. For displaying of the figure, I suppose you could take the tie and tuck it underneath the shirt, or underneath the jacket like this. Or, again, if you want to throw caution to the wind, you can bring that cow tongue out and have it sticking out, which is probably going to be the way I'm going to display the figure for myself. Of course, he does have the revealed sleeves down below. He's got these snaps there, the buttons on the ends of his sleeves, which is a nicely painted gold as well. And there's the back of the jacket again. Really nice sculpting in there. Wrinkles and folds, things that would naturally drape on a jacket, look quite good here. Still has a nice cartoon look to it, which is one of the things I really like about this particular line. The plastic has a real good durability to it. Not to the point where it feels like it's dense plastic that can be brittle over time. Like when you are moving the arms, for example, it's a very satisfying move. Bending the elbows, for example, I don't feel like there's any issues where the joints are going to give me problems down the road. Like I said, the choice and use of plastic that they are using for these figures is really quite good. Of course, you've got the under pads of Sam's feet here, sculpted just as well for the rest of the figure. And again, you've got Steve Purcell, the creator, underneath there with 2020 Boss Fight Studio. Peg holes on the undersides of his feet, though technically the figure doesn't have a display stand to come included with. Though he does stand quite well, he does benefit from having some additional ankle articulation that Max didn't have. Speaking of figure articulation, were we just speaking of figure articulation? Speaking of, yes, figure articulation, the head on Max, or Sam, I should say, does rotate back and forth. It's on a ball peg. Even though his stem that's underneath the ball peg isn't as long as Max's was, you can still actually get a good range of motion from his head, moving it up, moving it down, moving it back, moving it forward, and you can also rotate the head all the way around. As for the arms, you can bring the arms out. If you bring the arms a little bit further down, kind of like this, you get a little bit more clearance, but still, just due to the nature of the way that they've sculpted the tops of the shoulders, it's obviously going to butt up to the rest of the jacket. You're only really going to be able to pull off successfully about a 45-degree angle. You can bring the arms all the way around. He does have a single hinge in the elbow, which also allows the forearm to rotate as well, because the rotation is up here. His hands as well, whatever hands you decide to go with, rotate also back and forth. These don't have hinge joints. You saw the way that they were pegged in place. They're just simply, again, peg sockets. So again, it only gives you this to move the hands all the way around. Now, for Sam's articulation, he does also have an upper torso ball joint, something that his smaller partner wasn't able to pull off. His legs split out. Quite a splits, actually, as well on Sam. You can bring the legs forward and back. He has a single bend at the knee, which also allows the lower leg to rotate. Love the sculpting on those lower legs here. And as we had already talked about, his foot articulation allows him to move back and forth this way, rotate all the way around this way, and again, that well-appreciated ankle pivot. Especially when you're dealing with a character this size, you'd like to at least think that he could have firm, flat footing on a display stand, or at least on a shelf where you decide to display the figure for yourself. Because he does have those ankle pivots, it means, again, you can have the figure nice flat on a shelf. Let's just finish up shop here by getting his hat, putting it back in place. I left the hat off just because, again, for obvious reasons. When we were looking at the articulation on Sam, I just knew that the hat was going to fall off. So I just left it off for the time being. Let's bring in Max, his partner in crime again. And you know what? Let's also bring in the little tiny rats. Boy, oh boy, do I ever really like this set. I guess, again, the set when you pick up both figures for yourself. The figures do go well, like peanut butter and jelly, bacon and eggs. Trying to think of other analogies and comparisons I can use it to, but Sam and Max look really, really good. I think Boss Fight Studio has done an amazing job on both the figure releases here. Sam and Max would appear in an animated cartoon. Mind you, though, back in the day, everything would have its own animated series. The show, sadly, was short-lived. Maybe it had something to do with the fact that prior to the cartoon, the kids had no knowledge of either one of these characters, as good as the cartoon may have been. The animation, similar to The Tick, was geared towards younger viewers, but I feel like the writing and the humor was more focused for adult viewers to pick up and laugh at. Of course, my feelings towards Sam and Max was a great cartoon from what I remember of it, but my fonder memories of both the characters came from the original PC game Sam and Max Hit the Road, which, whether you had MS-DOS or you had Mac, circulated around the 93 to 95 time frame. How many people were around in 93 and 95? My relic of a computer, unfortunately, couldn't handle the graphically impressive game. So I went to my friend's house, who happened just to have the game as one of the games that he had in his library. And I actually had a blast playing Sam and Max. I think it was like one of those selective, you had to choose things to do in the game. It wasn't just a pick up and play kind of thing. It was certainly a fun game, and one of my, again, earliest memories of both these characters. Now, of course, fast forward several years, we have ourselves brand new figures from the folks over at Boss Fight Studio. Handled very well, if you ask me. Having now looked at both now Sam and Max, I'm really happy with what Boss Fight has done with the franchise. Of course, when it comes to these characters, they're packed to the rim with tons of accessories. I mean, even if you look at Sam here, in this review, we looked at 3 swappable heads, several swappable hands, a big giant gun, a popsicle, a hat, and one of my personal favorites, the paper bag puppet. So happy to see that they threw in the paper bag puppet. The figures are superposable, and they look like they were pulled either from the cartoon or that original PC game. I really, again, am very happy with how Boss Fight Studio have approached this. Now, apparently this is Wave 1. It's going to be definitely interesting to see what we're going to be getting with future Sam and Max figures. Boss Fight has also now started tackling Popeye, another cartoon I grew up watching. Definitely going to be interested in seeing those in hand. But if you are a big fan of Sam and Max, whether you watch the original cartoon series, short-lived sadly, or you played the original PC game, yay, you're old like me. Let me know down below in the comments section what you guys think of this line. And again, a big thank you to the folks over at Boss Fight Studio that provided the sample of both Max and Sam that we could have a look at in these 2 reviews. If you guys are new to this channel, enjoying all the content you're seeing, be sure, if you will, to hit that subscribe button down below. Also, as well, do yourself the service of hitting that bell notification so that you are getting those friendly reminders of when new videos are popping up. If you'd also like to backtrack and check out my other Boss Fight Studio reviews, there is a playlist that you'll probably see popping up shortly at the very end of this review. You can click on that and watch all the previous things that I've looked at from Boss Fight Studio. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.